I would like to welcome you to the 2022 Norton Select Board Debate hosted by Norton Cable Access. I'm Walter Eykel, the town moderator, and I will be conducting tonight's debate. Norton Media Cable is a nonprofit organization run by the Norton Cable Access Commission. The Norton Media Center brings you local and public access programming, and I would like to thank Jason and the staff of the Media Center for their work to bring this debate to you. The purpose of this debate is to allow the candidates to address you, the voters, and the residents of Norton in preparation for the town election to be held on Saturday, April 30th. Tonight, I am joined by Select Board candidates Kevin Snyder and Cody Thompson. They are joined in this race by candidates Rob Welsh, Stephen Hornsby, and Bill Maher, who declined to participate tonight. The rules for tonight's debate, which have been agreed to in advance by the participants, are as follows. The candidates will begin with an opening statement of up to 3 minutes. After that, I will pose questions provided by Norton residents, taken from past debates, and or of current interest to the town, to each of the candidates in turn. After all the participants have answered, each candidate may provide a rebuttal up to 1 minute. At the end of the debate, the candidates will then be able to make a closing statement of up to 3 minutes. No one other than me has seen the selected questions before tonight. The order of the speakers was determined by a random ballot before the debate. Discussion throughout the entire debate will be restricted to the questions posed and topics of official business. While criticisms of individual official records are allowed, no personal attacks of any individual will be allowed. Timing for the responses will be kept by Emma Arcaro. Emma is a political science student at Wheaton College who will be graduating in 2025. Thank you, Emma. At about 15 seconds before the end of the speaking time, the timekeeper will indicate this by raising her hand for the speakers to see. If there's no further business, we will move to the debate. And the response for the first question will come from Kevin Snyder.
Intros. Yeah, so we're doing the intro first?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yep.
I missed that already.
That's all right.
Okay, we will have opening statements by the individual participants. And the first opening statement will actually be from Cody Thompson.
Thank you, Walter. Good evening. I'd first like to thank Walter Eykel for organizing this debate and Norton Media Center for hosting. It's an important service, one that I think is critical for voters to make an informed decision before casting their votes for the 2 open seats of Select Board. I would also like to thank Kevin Snyder for agreeing to this debate and championing it from the beginning. Many of you watching this may not know me, so I'd like to take this time to introduce myself and tell you why I'm running as a write-in candidate. My name is Cody Thompson. My wife Callista and I moved here from Houston, Texas 3 years ago with our kids Colgan and Corley. We live in the Kays neighborhood with our 2 rescue dogs, Bella and Rocky. We moved here to be closer to our family in the New England area. It was a big decision to make, and we prayed for guidance as we searched for the new place we would call home. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that I literally dreamed of the home that we found online. As a Massachusetts native who went to college locally, my wife was familiar with the town, and as we researched the schools and everything else on our wish list, we found Norton fulfilled all of them. Once we moved here, we quickly made friends with neighbors and other Nortonites and found everyone to be genuinely kind and generous. Those relationships have been a true blessing over the past 2 challenging years. We attend Trinitarian Congregational Church, and we are active in Norton Youth Soccer, Norton Youth Baseball and Softball, Norton Basketball Association, and Art in Motion. The main reason I'm standing here tonight is my concern for the future of this town we all love. As a relatively new resident, I had very little knowledge of the candidates or historical politics, so I was looking forward to this debate to learn more about each of the candidates and gain some perspective into what kind of they would be in the role over the next 3 years. I was disappointed to learn that the other two candidates not here tonight had refused this debate. When I engaged them directly through social media, I became discouraged that there were seemingly no circumstances in which they would agree to a debate. And I became disgusted by the way any questions or concerns raised by anyone quickly devolved into personal attacks and the nastiness we've seen on the national political level. I felt very strongly that neither of the candidates unwilling to debate would live up to the standards set by the two members vacating the positions. As the exchanges on social media continued to devolve, I began receiving messages of encouragement to run as a write-in, with some people commenting that they would be writing me in before I had really considered it. Ultimately, I decided the future of this town is too important to risk having a member of the select board who I fear could be detrimental to the town. Jack Conway stood here 3 years ago and invoked the words of Gandhi, and I find myself similarly compelled to be the change I want to see in the world and in this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Snyder.
Okay. Well, first I wanted to wish Walter a happy birthday, so we should start there. It's a heck of a way to spend your birthday, hosting a debate. But also want to thank Walter for performing this service to the town, hosting this debate tonight. It's more than just what you see on the screen. It's also planning and organizing it. So I just wanted to start off by thanking you. As Cody alluded to, debates are an important part of our democracy in America, and it's an opportunity for the people of the town who are casting their votes to see how their candidates perform under pressure, how they answer questions, how they approach questions, how they treat each other. I've likened it very much to a job interview. Tonight's interviewer is Walter, and I wanted to start off by thanking him for doing that. I also wanted to thank the Media Center, Jason and his staff. They also perform a tremendous service to the town, so I wanted to thank them. And finally, I wanted to thank the voters of Norton. I have spent the last month and a half or so out there meeting people, talking to people online, and the reason I want to thank them is that the people that I've spoken to and the people that I've interacted with have really taught me a lot. They've taught me a lot about Norton. They've taught me how to be a better listener, how to listen to more than just the loudest voices in town. You know, sometimes the quietest voices have the most to say, but sometimes they don't feel like they can say it. So by far the best part of this campaign so far has been meeting all the voters in town. I have some examples of folks that I've talked to and some of the issues that they have brought to me from the very beginning when I was gathering signatures, talking to Brian about how we could work to clean up the Elm Street property, talking to Steve about reservoir area zoning, talking to Peter about transparency and documentation, improving that availability within our town, talking to Matt about our land, preserving our land and our natural resources. I talked to a woman named Becky about when we're talking about developing in Norton, that we not forget about how important neighborhood safety is. Spoke to Lucas about everyone's favorite topic, which is Prop 2.5 overrides. Had a great conversation with him about that. Spoke to folks about the water situation, which we're all aware of, and about bringing business to town in Norton without increasing the tax burdens on our seniors. So all of those things have been, for me, a learning experience talking about all those things with the people of Norton. To close, I just want to make a quick statement that as a select board member, I promise to keep listening to you, to look for balanced solutions to our challenges, and to be fair to everyone who comes in front of the select board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. All right, we will now move to the questions. And the first question is for Kevin. Norton typically has very low turnouts for town elections and town meetings, and seats regularly left on the without candidates on the ballot. How do you think we could get more people interested in understanding town government and becoming more active participants?
Thanks, Walter. So engagement is definitely something that has been on my mind a lot during this process. How do we engage the voters? How do we engage the citizens? I think one of the most important aspects of the select board, of being on the select board, is leading and being a leader. So how do we, first of all, how do we make everyone understand that the goals of the people of, if we have shared goals, that we can all achieve things together. So I think there's a lot of divisive topics that come up in our town, and I think the best way to address those divisive topics is to find common ground. So if we start to reduce some of that in town and we work together, even in some of the boards, you know, the school committee, the finance committee, the select board, you know, we don't always have to agree on things, but we can certainly work together with a common purpose. And I think if the people of the town see that, then they'll become more engaged in our politics. I also think, though, from a very practical standpoint, we need to do a better job of communicating when our elections are occurring, what the elections are for, what are the different town boards for, what do they do. You know, we have 20,000 or so people in this town, and there has to be any number of talented people out there who could serve on the planning board or the Economic Development Commission or the FinCom. So we need to encourage those people to come out by showing that the government can be to the benefit of the people of the town. So I just think there's so part of it is just leading by example, and then the second part of it is improving the communication. And I'll share a quick anecdote. I remember when my wife and I moved to town in 2011. We live on Bay Road, and if you live on Bay Road and you come off of 123 and you go left, or you come off of 495 and you go left at the exit, and you go down Bay Road, unless you drive through town, you would never know that there was a town election coming up in 2011. That was the case. So I just think we have to leverage technology. We have to make sure that we are communicating as much as possible, that there are openings, what are the preferred skills that we would like for the folks to be on those boards, make people comfortable feeling like they can be on a board even if they don't have a lot of experience. And I think all those things will improve engagement in the town government.
Thank you very much. And I will repeat the question for Cody. Norton typically has very low turnouts for town elections and town meetings, and seats are regularly left without candidates on the ballot. How do you think we could get more people interested in understanding town government and becoming more active participants?
Well, I'd like to first of all point out that low voter turnout is not unique to Norton. Unfortunately, it's a problem that we face in every local election, every state election, and to a lesser extent, every national election. I think the way that seems to draw people out is controversy. I'm not suggesting that we invoke controversy. I think people become complacent. I think people, to Kevin's point, maybe don't understand how all of the boards and committees work together to run the town. I can tell you from experience, coming from Texas, you know, the way that the local government works here, I had to research. I had to go into the town website, which has been improved, but at the time it was very difficult to find anything. I had to go in and read a charter. I had to go, you know, I had to do research to figure out what the boards were, what the committees were, how they all kind of work together. And it wasn't until I became involved in the Economic Development Commission that I kind of gained a better appreciation for that and understanding of that, seeing how the planning board works. I was also trying to get some work done to my house and had to go through the zoning board process. So I had to read up on what all the zoning laws were, if I was, you know, how to contact abutters, if there was going to be any issues with the Conservation Commission, if there were any wetlands, you know, all of those things. People only understand or only have to learn about these things whenever it affects them. And to Kevin's point, I agree. We need to, engage people and put it on a level that they can understand. And that's something that I think we all can do a better job of. Anybody that is involved in local politics, local government, is to be more engaging, whether it's social media, whether it's in person. I don't know if putting signs up on billboards or town boards about upcoming elections. I don't want us to have to rely upon controversy in order to drive voter turnout. Shortly after we moved here, the debt exclusion that Kevin had mentioned was up. It was the contested race where Jack and Renee were running against two longstanding members of the select board had just happened. Then you have the debt exclusion, and you have the charter commission. All of these were important things, and even still, the voter turnout there was still well below 50% of registered voters, and that's a shame, because you end up having a smaller number of people voting on very important things. And things that affect everybody in town. And if I recall correctly, the town meeting to ratify the results of that decision was even less. There were a few hundred, maybe, that turned out for that. So, being more engaging, putting it on a level, like Kevin said, where you're showing how the different commissions and boards and committees work together and why they're necessary, I think is important for voters to know.
Thank you, Cody. I would like to offer Kevin a 1-minute rebuttal opportunity.
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of things that came to mind while Cody was speaking, and I think one of the things we should acknowledge is that a lot of these things that we talk about as far as voter engagement, as far as town government and transparency and leading by example, I think we've made tremendous progress in those areas over the past 3 years. So I think we tend to focus on the problems and sometimes focus on the negative, but we've seen a lot of positives in the last couple of years. I know at one point there were some educational sessions on town government, like Town Government 101. I think that's a fantastic idea. We should invite people from the town to come learn about the town government in a formal setting. Have people come and interact with their government, with the people who are in the government. So I'm on the FinCom now. The people that are in your town government are your neighbors. They're volunteers. They're not Washington senators. They're just the people who live next door to you. So
I have to cut you off there.
So I think that's important to recognize.
And I'd like to offer Cody a minute rebuttal as well.
Yeah, just one more thing that had come to mind is, through the process of joining the EDC, I was kind of convinced to join it. I was at first intimidated by it. I didn't know what the EDC was. I didn't know how it played into how the town's run. I thought I'd be, more responsible for something and how the town is run, and that I could, that there was maybe something that I could mess up. And that's just not the case. And it wasn't until I got into that I started learning how everything kind of works together. And, part of, I think, people getting engaged is reaching out to neighbors and explaining to them that while it can be intimidating at first, once you get in, you realize you're just usually at this point on a Zoom call or meeting with your neighbors who can become friends.
Thank you very much. All right, and the next question will go to Cody first. In recent years, splitting the tax rate would have led to a $10 increase for commercial and industries for every $1 of residential decrease. Where do you believe the sweet spot for splitting our tax rate to provide a meaningful relief to our residents while not overburdening our small business exists?
Okay. Well, I'd first like to point out the obvious, which is nobody wants to see more taxes. At the same time, we do need the funds to be able to run the town, to fund the schools, to fix the roads, to fix the water. There's a lot of issues, and the town as it's run is running very lean. So we do need to find additional funds. As far as splitting a tax rate, certainly it's something that I would look into. It's not something that I'm familiar with, but I am a numbers guy, and I'd like to see what the proposed rate differences would be, and kind of what that break-even point, if we're talking about reducing for residents, increasing for commercial, industrial, retail, what that break-even point is, if we can offer some relief to residents, where we're going to make up for it, and how much more we're going to see from retail. We also need to keep in mind that we aren't the only town around that has the resources available to us. You've got neighboring towns that may offer less, less of a tax burden, and all of those are going to be factors that come into play when you have new entrants into the town, and whether or not they're willing to pay a premium if our tax rate is higher than a neighboring town's tax rate. So it would really depend on what the proposal was and what the net impact to the town would be. So apart from having something concrete to dig into, which I will after this, if there's proposals out there, I will certainly look them up and reach out to some of my friends that sit on the different committees like FinCom and Planning Board to discuss that.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will repeat the question for Kevin. In recent years, splitting the tax rate would have led to a $10 increase for commercial and industrial businesses for every $1 residential decrease. Where do you believe the sweet spot is for splitting our tax rate to provide a meaningful relief to our residents while not overburdening the small business?
Okay, thanks, Walter. So I think this is a great question because I think it speaks to the difficulty in answering a question about where the sweet spot is on tax rates when I don't think Cody or I has studied that well enough to really provide a specific answer to, well, I think it's $7 and $3. I think what you need to do is you need to look at the evidence out there about, or the examples out there of what other towns are doing, what would the impact be, have a study done on the impact of a split tax rate. You have to think about what are some other ways that we could get businesses to town. Is tax rate something that affects whether or not a business opens in a town? Of course it is. Is it the only thing? No, it's not. So, we have to look at things like, okay, if we go with a split tax rate, it's a competitive environment out there. As Cody mentioned, there are other towns all trying to bring in businesses to their towns as well. So these are the types of things that when you're a select board member, you need to stop and think and analyze the information and the data that you have, the facts that you have, and then try to form a position based on that information. My knowledge on this issue right now is that the best way to lessen the impact of any kind of tax change or tax increase on the residents is to attract more businesses to Norton. So if we focus on attracting more business to Norton, then the impact on the townspeople, particularly on those on fixed incomes, will be less. So, but again, we talk about the complexity of these issues and when things like this conflict. So we all say, nobody's going to come up here and say, well, I'm against business in town. No one's against business coming to town. We all want business to come to town. But then we have to think about, like the voters I talk to, well, what does that do to neighborhoods? What does it do for zoning? What does it do for safety? What does it do for traffic? All these things that come up as a result of something as simple as, well, we want to bring more business to town, protecting our natural resources, our wetlands. So all of these things have to go into the mix when you're talking about something like changing the tax rate or splitting the tax rate. And so I think the important thing here is when you're looking at who to vote for select board, are you looking at someone who is going to understand that before forming an opinion, who you trust is going to make those decisions based on facts and data and information that's available to us all? And I think that's really the question you're answering when you go to the ballots, when you cast your vote on April 30th.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll offer one minute rebuttal to Cody.
Yeah, I mean, while Kevin was talking, hit the nail on the head on one of the follow-up things that I was thinking about is attracting more business is the best way to raise revenues. I think the proposal of splitting a tax rate is taking into account that your tax revenues are set, that your industry is set, the businesses that are in town are generating revenue in its, the residents versus the businesses, and I don't think that that's necessarily the case. The other important thing to remember in any economic scenario is businesses, while they pay taxes, they pass taxes through. And if you increase taxes on existing businesses, they will force that tax increase through to their bottom line. So they will raise rates, they will raise their prices in order to offset that. And in a time of inflation, whenever all prices are skyrocketing already, I think if you're talking about imposing additional taxes on businesses, eventually that's going to trickle down to everybody. So you may not pay the taxes directly, but it will come through as a pass-through cost.
Thank you, Cody. And 1 minute to Kevin.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point to raise that how businesses make decisions is something that we have to remember when we're approving or making votes or making decisions or forming opinions about things. And businesses make decisions a lot of times. Actually, we all do make decisions based on incentives, right? So what's the incentive for a business to come to town? Well, okay, one of them might be lower taxes or lower fees. But some of the other things that bring businesses to town are a thriving downtown, customers, people that will buy their product. Those are the types of things that I think on the select board and some of the other boards in town as well, we can work together as a team to get out there and try to get more businesses into town by showing them that Norton is business friendly. Some of that's going to be marketing and some of it's going to be communication, but a lot of it's going to be pulling these different groups together in town as one and getting out there and convincing businesses to come to Norton.
Thank you, Kevin. Question 3 goes to Kevin first this time. There have been several high-profile instances of various boards in town making unpopular decisions. The Planning Board initially rejecting the proposed Cumberland Farms project on West Main Street and the Conservation Commission's enforcement on 162 West Main Street. What role do you feel that the Select Board should take in these matters, preserving board autonomy, elected and appointed, while representing what you perceive to be in the best interest of the community?
That's a great question. So one of the first things I did when I decided to run for select board was to actually look up what the select board does. So I thought that was a good place to start. So what does the select board do? The select board has non-school appointing authority, so appoints various board members in town. It's responsible for managing the financial stability of the town. It's responsible for risk management in the town, insurance, making sure that we're not at risk for certain things, whether those are financial things or human resources things or whatever they are. So anyway, the point being that the the select board has a role to play in leading by example and leading the town and setting the priorities for the town. So I think when it comes to unpopular decisions, I think the select board ultimately has to take in all the information that it has, and it has to, in my opinion, has to take a greater role in setting what are the priorities for the town. And whether that's through closer management of the budget or whether it's pulling groups together to talk about issues, whether it's joint meetings with the other boards. I really think that the select board role is one where where leadership is important. So I don't think the select board's role should be to overturn unpopular decisions by the other boards. Those other boards are vital and critical to the process of understanding what the issues are on a certain situation. So for the select board, for example, to come in and overrule, say, the Conservation Commission on something where the Conservation Commission has spent years, and has people on it who have expertise in that area, I don't think that necessarily is the role of the select board to sort of take over the job of the other boards in town. But can the select board have influence over the direction and the priorities of the town? Absolutely, I think it should. I think, again, it all comes back to, do you trust the people on the select board to listen to you, to understand your issues, whether you're a business or a resident in town, and do you trust that person on the, on the select board is going to consider all sides of an issue and make a reasonable and intelligent and informed decision about that particular issue?
Thank you, Kevin. Now to you, Cody, I'll repeat the question. There have been several high-profile instances of various boards in town making unpopular decisions. The Planning Board initially rejecting the proposed Cumberland Farms project on West Main Street, and the Conservation Commission's enforcement of an order on 162 West Main Street. What role do you feel that the Select Board should take in these matters, preserving board autonomy while representing what you perceive to be in the best interest of the town?
Thank you. First of all, the town charter establishes the authority of each of the boards and committees outlined in it. So the authority of the select board is limited to what the charter says it is. And that's very intentional. So Conservation Commission is over everything conservation and wetlands and land protection. Planning Board is over zoning and master plan. And Select Board essentially acts as a CEO of the town. While they aren't necessarily responsible for everything, they are the figurehead, they are the leader of the town, they are the face of the town, they're the voice of the town. And in difficult and unpopular decisions, such as the one that was recently resolved with the Conservation Commission, it puts them in a very difficult position where anything that is in litigation, they're bound by non-disclosure, and executive sessions are closed for that reason. It is in litigation, and those discussions have to be private, the same way that discussion from the other party would be private with their attorney. So that confidentiality exists for a reason. At the same time, there is certainly the perception that the select board could have done more, could have steered things a certain way. I think I got into town as this was kind of building into what it was, what it became, and I did my own research on it. I looked into the case law. As with anything where I don't understand it, I dug into it. I researched it. I read about it. I read the suit. I read the decisions from Superior Court, and I also have the advantage of having a, I'll call it quasi-legal background, working in insurance, and understanding how lawsuits work. You get a general liability lawsuit, you have a plaintiff, you have a defendant, and understanding how that works out, the positions both start from, they're trying to work to an agreement, and Select Board plays a role as the face of that discussion, while also being bound by confidentiality. So it's a very difficult decision, but I think it's important to present a very understanding and strong front that the town is certainly not against a business. They're not against development, but there are laws and rules and procedures in place that have to be enforced. And whenever things kind of go awry, sometimes difficult decisions have to be made, and you want to be able to trust the people in that position.
Excuse me, I don't need to cut you off there, but thank you very much.
Yep.
And let's see. So I would like to offer Kevin a 1-minute rebuttal.
Sure. So hearing the question a second time, there was a phrase in there, board autonomy, which I think, again, when we look at the select board's role, I really view the select board's role as one of fostering a team approach to dealing with the town's problems or issues. And so this idea of board autonomy, I think, is an important one, because the select board, if the select board starts to undo or overrule or tries to do those things through whatever means it might be, to overrule the other committees, you think that getting people to participate in local government now is difficult? Think about having them be on a committee and working on something and spending their time and volunteering for the town and away from their families and all these things that these people sacrifice to be on these boards, only to have a select board come in and overturn all of the work that they've done. So if you want to promote people to be more engaged in the town, going back to the first question, then you give the boards the autonomy that they should have in order to get decisions made and to get the right decisions made.
Thank you, Kevin. And a 1-minute rebuttal, Cody?
Just to further that point, the autonomy within each of the established boards and commissions within the town charter exists for a reason, and we have to trust in that. The people of this town spoke up 2 years ago and voted to maintain the charter as it was written. The select board has to operate within the confines of the authority that is given to them, and we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where the select board is seen to be overextending their authority or acting in a manner where they're unilaterally deciding how the town's going to be run. The commissions and boards are there for a reason, and their autonomy is established for a reason. The select board has very limited authority to do anything other than what the charter says it can do.
Excellent. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And on to question number 4, and this will go to Cody first. In your opinion, how can the town improve the quality and consistency of its communications with residents? Projects, initiatives, board meetings, opportunities to get engaged, et cetera.
It's kind of a challenging question because we live in an age of readily accessible information. You've got social media, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, like all of these things. I'm not on half of them. I know the residents of this town aren't on the majority of them. And the ones that do get a lot of attention fall into the traps of negativity and just nastiness and name calling. But at the same time, it's a bit of a catch-22 because it's the easiest way to get information out. The days of putting something in the newspaper and everybody reading it because everybody read the newspaper are, for the most part, gone. There is still some of that, but pretty much everybody's getting their information online. And I think finding a way to tap into that potential is the best way of doing it. I can say on the EDC, we discussed this as part of the conversation of how to get, how to drive business for the existing companies in town. And I came up with the idea of adding a hashtag or creating a hashtag campaign within Norton. And the idea is you have various businesses in town that are utilizing Facebook or Instagram, and whenever they post, there's a really good opportunity for them to tag various things that they support or link back to anybody else that's posting something similar. That's all the hashtag is. It's just an aggregator of information that is somehow linked. So we started the hashtag Norton for Biz hashtag, and I've promoted it to local businesses. We're working on getting some information put out, having stickers put together so that we can put them on doors of businesses. The information, making the information available. People want to know what's going on in town. People want to shop local. They want to support local businesses. And creating that hashtag gives them a way of simply searching Norton for Biz, what's going on in town. And I think we can very easily create some sort of similar campaign in town and have, create a position or, somebody within the town for, a social media director or something along those lines that is responsible for putting stuff like that out there and really promoting the town.
Thank you, Cody. I'll repeat the question for you, Kevin. In your opinion, how can the town improve the quality and consistency of its communication with residents? Projects, initiatives, board meetings, opportunities to get engaged, et cetera.
I like this question because I think it touches on something that we've seen some real progress on in town over the past 3 years. And I think it shows the impact of how the select board or even a single person on the select board can improve communication throughout the town. And I think everybody would agree that Jack Conway has been outstanding at keeping people informed. I mean, before Jack, we wouldn't get the select board agenda posted on Facebook before the select board meeting. You'd have to find it yourself. You wouldn't even know when the meeting was. So some of those things are just simple things and it's not just Jack. Other members of the select board have also done similar things that that those are simple things that we can do to get the amount and the quality, the consistency of that communication out there. I think one of the other things that we need to do is we need to understand how people receive information and receive communication, not just think about how we put it out there. So just as an example from the FinCom, we were talking, this was I think maybe a year ago or a year and a half ago, but we were talking about putting the zoning change signs out on the street, and where people can drive by and see that there's a proposed zoning change. And at the time, some folks on the FinCom were saying, well, we should just do all that electronically. We shouldn't have to put those signs out anymore. And I made the point at the time that assumes that everybody receives their information electronically, and that's just not the case. There are a lot of people who drive by those signs, and that is how they learn about a proposed zoning change. So I think we have to be smart and efficient about how we communicate to the town and how people communicate from government to the town. But I also think that you have to try to make it as broad as possible for people to receive those communications. And I think through doing that, you'll improve the consistency as well. So there's all kinds of things we could be doing better. We could upgrade our infrastructure. We could look at broadband or low-cost broadband. I know we're looking at that already for some of the folks in the town. Promoting the Norton alert system is something that I don't think a lot of people know even exists. So a lot of that again is just continuing, I think, what we have seen over the past 3 years, which is a vast improvement in our communication, but not stopping here. Let's keep looking at different ways and better ways that we can improve the quality and the consistency of the communication. Just by understanding those few simple things that I just mentioned.
Thank you, Kevin. 1 minute to Cody.
Sure. Just a couple of things. I have been encouraged by the members of the select board, putting announcements out on Facebook. For example, the spring cleanup that's coming up this Saturday. I think I saw a post from every single one of the select board members, and encourage everybody that's watching to come out and participate in that. Jack's Super FunCom with the select board and FinCom and school board. I saw that announcement and sat in on that. I think those are important things, but the expectation that the select board members are going to be the ones running with that, I think, is misplaced, because a lot of select board is bound by open meeting law and restricted on what can be posted on social media. So you have to set that expectation. I think really the best way of doing it is establishing some sort of position within the town that would be responsible for public relations.
Thank you, Cody. And 1 minute to Kevin.
Yeah, and I think I think there's one other thing that we have to remember too when we talk about communication is we just came through 2 years of a global pandemic, and everybody if you think about the difference in your ability to do things like use Zoom or have video conference calls or use FaceTime, just in the last 2 years, that's become a really important means of folks to communicate with each other. So I know the various boards right now are looking at whether or not to go back to in-person meetings or to try hybrid meetings where we would have members of the board in person somewhere and then have folks be able to participate by Zoom. But I think if we're talking about communication and that two-way street of communication, one of the tools we could use is are tools like Zoom and online applications like that, and to continue to encourage their use, maybe not exclusively, but to encourage their use to get more people participating in the town government.
Great. Thank you very much, Kevin. So this concludes the question and answer portion of our debate. We will now have closing statements by the candidates. And first up for closing statements is Kevin.
Thanks, Walter. So my closing statement is pretty short, and I just want to have one final message to the voters before they go out on April 30th at the middle school from the hours of 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Everybody, if you can, if you're able to, should go out and vote. And it doesn't matter who you vote for. The most important thing you can do is get out and let everyone hear your voice at the ballot box. My final message tonight is that in 2019, the election results in the town of Norton showed a clear desire of the town to move forward together. And over the last 3 years, I think we have. We've become more transparent, communicated with the public better, become more efficient in some areas, and navigated through some extremely tough waters with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. Most of this progress that we have made in this town is through the contributions of the volunteers that you either elected or the volunteers that were appointed to town committees and town boards. These people are your friends, your family, and your neighbors that are doing their absolute best for Norton. But there's still more that we can do to improve. So my last simple message is this. If you want the town to continue moving in a positive direction, then I think the choice is clear, and I am asking for your vote on April 30th. Thank you. Thank
you, Kevin. And to Cody.
Thank you, Walter. Thank thank you again to Kevin and to the Norton Media Center and everybody responsible for putting this, this debate on and for this opportunity. Thank you also to everyone who has taken time to watch this debate and for your consideration. I've spent my professional career as an insurance broker working with clients ranging from Fortune 100 oil and gas companies to sole proprietor employment staffing agencies. Each day I conduct risk identification through critical thinking and collaboration with my clients, finding ways to ensure their needs are adequately covered and represent them in third-party negotiations to get the best terms. I'm constantly required to coordinate multiple teams to build cohesive programs for my clients. Those skills, I believe, will translate well for the role of Select Board. I'm open, honest, sincere, fair, and candid, and I have thick skin. Playing football from the age of 9 through college greatly contributed to my ability to collaborate and work with others as a team for a common goal regardless of my personal feelings about them. I'm also extremely frugal and all about efficiency. Together, I believe these qualities and experiences have prepared me for this position. 3 years ago, Norton elected 2 relative outsiders to these 2 seats. I know their supporters are proud of the manner in which they have conducted themselves. I'm truly grateful to have received their endorsements, and I am humbled by the outpouring of support and kind words over the past 11 days. They are leaving some big shoes to fill, and I promise to do my best to be the Select Board member you all deserve. We have great momentum toward fulfilling our beautiful town's incredible potential. Please come out to vote next Saturday, April 30th at Norton Middle School, and write in Cody Thompson for your Select Board vote. You can also find out, visit my Facebook page, Cody for Norton, for a full example of what the ballot would look like. And I thank you all again.
Thank you, gentlemen. I would like to thank Kevin Snyder and Cody Thompson for coming out tonight, and all 5 candidates for offering their time in service of the town of Norton. Thanks again to Jason and the team here at the Norton Media Center for their work on the recording and distributing it to the town. And finally, I'd like to thank Emma Arcaro for doing our timing for the questions tonight. Remember that the election is Saturday, April 30th at the Norton Middle School from 8 to 4. Absentee ballots are available at the town clerk's office. In addition to the Select Board race, there are races for School Committee, Housing Authority, Water and Sewer Commission, Planning Board, and Board of Assessors. All these boards and committees have direct impacts on us as Norton residents. Please consider coming out to vote. Thank you to all of you for watching our debate, and remember that your vote is important. Have a good night.